Good morning all. Thank you for joining us. I hope you all had a delicious barbecue feast last night. Good. We have an incredible day planned for you all, beginning with this incredible, I'll call it a jet-side table chat with Alexandra Grant and Meghan Gord, the director of OCHI projects. We're so grateful to Polly OCHI, to Alexandra, to Meghan Gordon for joining us for this year's edition. And we're absolutely thrilled for these new paintings that Alexandra has made, produced, and presented here for this edition. Her first series in oil painting, if I'm correct.
In a little while.
In a bit. And I will just tell you a brief synopsis of the schedule today. We are going to have the opening of JPW3 at the site of MARFA Invitational's new foundation. So we're very excited about that. He produced these outdoor works specifically for the site. It's incredible with the way that they interact with both the light and the space, obviously the historical context of MARFA, etc., etc. So that is from 4 to 6 p.m. We will have margaritas, most generously poured by Lalo Tequila, our favorite tequila. And just a quick direction, if you head towards Alpine, the site is a quarter-mile up the hill. As you depart Marfa, there'll be a Marfa Invitational flag, and it's Highway 90 and Golf Course Road, but you will absolutely find it. And so we look forward to welcoming you. The left. This is my mom chiming in. So. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for being here. Still correcting me, which I appreciate. A little slap on the wrist, and fortunately there are no coat hangers around. I love you. I think there's a couple more people coming in, which we're thrilled for them to join us, so come in and grab a seat. With no further ado, let me introduce one of my favorite artists, and certainly my favorite person. I absolutely adore. I've had the incredible opportunity of getting to know Alexandra over the past 2 years now, because we were planning for this presentation for 220, which we all know is now 221. So over that time, I gained a tremendous amount of respect, friendship, camaraderie, and all those wonderful things. And I'm just so grateful for her friendship and for her being here today. I will let Meghan Gordon introduce her, and thank you all for joining us. Enjoy.
Thank you so much for having us. My name is Meghan Gordon. I'm the director of OCHI projects, and I'm thrilled to introduce my good friend, Alexandra Grant. We met 8 years ago, and since she came into my life, I feel like I've learned so much from you, working with you in every capacity that is possible as a human. And I am so excited to introduce you guys to this new body of work that Alexandra has been working on here. Not here, but we're presenting it here for the first time. These paintings have never been seen before. They just left the studio. And Alexandra is an artist based in Los Angeles, and I'm gonna let you do your own bio, if that's okay. Is that okay?
Can we skip the bio?
Oh yeah, we can skip the bio. Yeah, I don't want to do mine either. Great. It's
Saturday morning.
It's Saturday morning,
everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us. It really means a lot to me that you are all here. Good morning all the way to the back row. We're really thrilled you're here. So we can do a little bio, but I'm going to do it in a bit of an unusual way. So one of the greatest things for me about being an artist and being a woman in the art world is getting to mentor and get to know other artists and think a lot about we're already off script. This is great. We had a question we were going to start with, and I'm not even letting that happen. But
We'll get there.
we'll get there. But it's just so important to think about it's a cause that I really care about, is the gender makeup of the art world. And so for me, I got to teach. I haven't taught in a while, but the last time I taught, Meghan was my student. And one of the extraordinary things about it, we were at Cal Arts, it was really fun. I gave you permission to start a bar in your studio, which I don't think the other faculty members were terribly pleased about, that decision. But it's so important and so remarkable that we get to have different relationships with other artists over time and that they evolve. So it never, in my wildest dreams, even 3 months ago, would I have imagined that Meghan and I would be sitting here in the capacity of her being the director of the gallery that is presenting my work at the fair. So it's really important to me to discuss how our relationships evolve. And relationships is the segue to your first question.
Absolutely, because relationships are all about love, in my opinion. Even when you don't feel like you love somebody for whatever reason, you're always operating with love. How would you want to be treated? How would you want to be introduced? Just everything in the art world, I think, is about relationships, and therefore is actually about love. And love is something that Alexandra and I have been discussing for many years. It's one of our favorite topics, and not necessarily in the way you would think. We talk about love as an ethics, a code of ethics that we operate by, and we're constantly kind of thinking about, how do we make work that talks about this? Yes, of course, which is a challenge. How do you make a painting about love? That's a really big question. It's hard to answer. In fact, it's kind of hard to communicate most things in painting. So, snaps for anyone that tries to communicate about love in paint. But love is the will to nurture one's own or another's spiritual well-being. That's my definition of love, and I've stolen it directly from a book called All About Love. And it's a quote that comes from a psychologist in the 70s, Eric Fromm. And I think that definition for me just really nails, for me, it changed my life when I read it, basically. And we talk about love in all these different ways. So maybe you can talk to me a little bit about why love is so important to you.
Starting with the small questions. First, I just want to say thank you to Michael for giving me the opportunity to share the paintings in the booth and also to have the Grant Love pop-up shop. So if you haven't seen both, I just want to say that I am fortunate to have received the gift to have two presences of love that are different parts of the same practice for me as an artist. So for me, love, the first part has to be about loving oneself, accepting oneself. I mean, if you don't know this about me, I'm a 6'1", very white-haired individual. And so the idea that I could hide, or that sometimes we all fantasize about what if we had been born, hello train, if we'd been born in a different package, what our lives, how our body circumscribes our existence, where we're born, the body we're born into, the health we're in. The idea that I would be able to hide it's not possible. I stand up and it's like, oh, there she is, turn left. That's a very tall woman. So self-love for me is about sort of accepting our packaging, and then of course our packaging is in relationship to our context, right? And the first context we learn is our family, right? And so the second sort of pillar of love in my imagination is how we relate to our family and the people we know. But it's really the third pillar for me, which is how do we relate to people we don't know? And that really brings in difference. How do we relate? Our family is often similar to us, even though we don't want to admit it. But it's really how do we love across difference, and how do we love people who are different than us? How do we love people that we don't know? And so the way I structure my practice is in three parts as well. I guess I really love the number 3, but I have a studio practice where I get to be all by myself and express sort of my particular intellectual interests, which are philosophy and literature. The paintings we're presenting here at MARFA are about the myth of Antigone. So a myth that's over 2,000 years old, yet continues to resonate for generation after generation. And I think it's because it's this young woman. She's a badass. She could be a Texan for sure, like a bandita. And she stands up to her uncle, who's the king of thieves, and says, basically, no, what you're doing, your rule of law, there's a higher law, and it's love. And the reason she's so mad, that she's so full of rage, is that he won't let her brother be buried because he's a traitor to the state. And he says, no, or she says, no, I want to bury his body because God's law, or whatever higher law you believe in, he deserves to be treated equally. And for that, she's put to death. Definitely not a comedy, the myth of Antigone. And I think it's been so important in the last few years, especially in the United States, as the political climate has been all over the map, to think about, well, what does love mean? What does it mean for a young girl to stand up to the rule of law and express something that she, isn't just legislated, but like what her civil rights are. And so that's what's going on in here in the gallery representation. But then I have this Grant Love project, and many of you are familiar with it, and it's also an artist project. And to me, it's artists get asked all the time to support nonprofits. Like, I get asked probably once a week, can you donate a work to this auction? Can you do this? And I began, like many artists do, to feel a little bit resentful that my studio practice was constantly, like, the best works were being taken for auctions, and it just felt like, well, how do I then stabilize prices? I mean, it's a big issue. I want to be supportive. I want to be a civic-minded artist. I want to be someone who gives back and nurtures. So I decided, well, what if I create a prêt-à-porter line? So I have my collection, but what if I have a line? So I developed a love symbol, trademarked it, and then I make my own love works, but I also license it to other artists so I can help them, add to making a living. But then we sell these editions and we can donate them to every, unlimited amounts of editions to different nonprofits. So I'm very interested in fundraising, but more importantly, friend raising. And so friend raising is a kind of love. And what is that,
Well, just to point out that, this model where you're talking about, yes, everyone wants to contribute to the greater good, to raise money for good causes. But what you're doing essentially is being inspired by Antigone and the word love and the concept of love, and redefining how the economy can support that better. Basically changing the metrics of the way the money is being moved around. And which also protects the artists, because they're not asked to, if you don't know, when you're asked to donate a work of art, the price goes out there, the price could fluctuate. It could, if you're at a fragile point with your career, it could really affect your career in a bad way, even when you're donating to a great cause or great institution. So this is a very common topic of conversation amongst artists. And so what Alexandra has been doing with the Grant Love Project is incredibly radical. And the fact that it's inspired by love and Antigone is, I don't think, something that people quite make the connection to, because honestly, there's always so much to talk about with your work alone, and then to kind of step out into these other organizations that you're working with. But in my opinion, it's like all of these different parts are working together in concert, which is so beautiful and so rare for an artist practice.
I appreciate that. I think the word economy comes from the Greek oikos, which means home. And so the notion of having a domestic-based artistic practice, often, again, I just want to return to the idea of gender. I really think about, I want to be an artist who is a woman and who works as a woman would work in the art world. And I want to, when I first started the Love Project, I got a lot of, they weren't literal pats on the head, but people were like, that's so cute. And then we started giving away, $100,000 or $20,000. That the money became real, and it became, wait, this isn't just cute anymore. You're shifting what's possible. Philanthropy is so important, but it's also important that it be horizontal as well as vertical. That we create new modes. And more than anything, I wanted to give permission. When I was teaching at CalArts, I would talk a lot about entrepreneurship. It was a very dirty word, which is very funny because so many of the patrons of the arts are entrepreneurs. But there was this absolute hysteria about talking about entrepreneurship. And what I began to see was there was a real focus on Marxist philosophy and theory, which didn't really serve the majority of students in my classroom, who are women and who are people of color. And what I felt that everyone could understand and read Marx, which is wonderful, and Marx's thought, but the skills that people really needed to understand is why it might be good to have an LLC as an artist, or why it's okay to sell your work and it's not about selling out. Or can we please speak about what it means when so many artists are heirs and don't have to think about money? And so for me, it's really important to talk about how dignity is tied to personal economy and to make it transparent as possible. So I try to live my life as someone who is part of a community first, right? That I take care of my back to self-love, family love, but then part of a community of other artists. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to do my career. And I'm going to have a painting practice that's radically solo. I love to make my work by myself. I love to think. It's where I get to be my, inner child, read books, but I protect that for me. And then I have the Grant Love Project, which is absolutely about community building. And it's about teaching that entrepreneurship is not an ugly thing for artists to pursue. And then because, of course, I don't like to sleep, I, in 2017 co-funded a publishing house because I was like, we need more opportunities that aren't just about receiving money, but are about, getting language back into artistic practice. And then, again, thinking through, we're doing a new line of books at the company's called X Artist Books, and we're doing X projects. It's focused, 2 curators who are women of color curated 3 artists who are artists of color. And we realized, wow, the artists can't afford their own time to write their books. So suddenly we had to rethink, it's not, oh cool, you got a book deal. Well, if you can't write the book, right? Because you're struggling financially. So suddenly we were like, okay, we're gonna have to triple, come up with a real salary for these artists. And again, I think that's what I mean by love. It's not being embarrassed about your finances. It's not being embarrassed about these things. It's really talking about them. Maybe not publicly like we're doing right now, but talking about what will it take what kind of support do you need, right? To be grounded and sane, to have dignity, and from that place, create your work, right? And I think those are the kinds of questions that I, as a teacher and your former teacher, really think about. That especially women I found in the classroom, they dominate the theory. They don't need more philosophy. They need cheerleading, right? And it's issues of confidence. And again, what does confidence mean? I'm sorry, I'm gonna word that. It means with trust, right? So it's like, how do you give women the sense, or any artist really, the sense to trust themselves that where they're coming from and what their point of view is, it has value. And again, value ties back, unfortunately, to financial worth as well. So for me as an artist, I think, we all say that when you become a teacher, you become the teacher you wish you had, right? And so for me, what I try to do is again, it's self-nurturing, but I want to be that person for other people that I wish I had had, and to protect people. I'm a bit of a mother. It's true.
A word, and that's beautiful.
A mother.
I mean, I think I have that in me as well, and that's something that we talk about a lot, this word permission.
Yeah.
And, I've begun to think about the word permission as kind of like an act of love, right? Which it absolutely is. So, there are so many people that we meet in our world that are very talented and are not reaching whatever level of visibility or success. And a lot of times it's that people are kind of defeating themselves. They're preventing themselves from contacting, from asking for help, from putting their work out there. And, I think when we met, you were my teacher, and I saw you give permission to so many people to pursue something that was a little bit scary, that they were scared to talk about, whether that was because it was related to a personal trauma or something that they just cared so deeply about and they had never shared it with anyone before, and I really feel like that is the first step in terms of, in the art world, art is a lot about education. I mean, you look at art and you learn about yourself, what do you think about when you see something, you know? And then a lot of artists are communicating about things that they love, so you then learn about the things that the artist loves and is interested in speaking about. You know, we were talking about Sophocles today because Alexandra loves this play, you know? And so art is constantly learning, and most artists are autodidacts. They're always learning for themselves in different ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be through literature. But the next step then is to kind of make that all visible, and so many women, artists especially, and artists of color, are not encouraged and given that permission to make their voices louder and to show the world what they love and the things that they think are important to communicate about. And so that's something that I saw Alexandra do 8 years ago in a classroom, and then I myself started to do like very soon after that. And then, you know, now that I'm working with artists all the time through the gallery, through the various galleries that I've worked at in LA, it's something that I hold up as like, this is a pillar of who I am, like supporting people that have so much to say, have so much value to add to the world, and have not been given an opportunity. So, you know, to bring it back around to love, like, there was a performance here yesterday with all these questions. People were answering these very, like, vulnerable questions. One of the questions was like, what are you the most proud of? And in my head, I always immediately, like, the thing I am the most proud of is the way that I love, you know? And it's just been so wonderful talking about these things with you, because I have been expanding my idea of what love is for 8 years since we met and started talking about it. But I wanted to come back and talk about the paintings, which almost all of them have the word love in them. And I was wondering if you could actually just repeat the phrase that Antigone says that has been recurring in all your work.
So she says, I was born to love, not to hate. Which is very profound. And for me, it's not about, that phrase is not about putting love and hate as opposites, because I don't actually think they are, but it's about the choice we make. And maybe it's because I read The Secret, I don't know, but that idea that you know, what happens when we experience negative emotions in our bodies, right? Like if we experience envy or if we experience hate, for me, they're just the biggest teachers. And that idea of choosing love every time, choosing to connect, choosing to reframe something because because we feel a negative emotion. For example, I'm not sure, I don't like participating in competition. The idea, again, this is the language of The Secret, the idea that the art world is scarce is part of what drives the market aspect of it, but I find it a very hostile environment to live and work in. So I would rather say there is no competition. Resources are infinite. My creativity is infinite. And I want to reverse engineer from my creativity outwards a world that I feel happy to live in. Now, part of why language and home are important to me is that I grew up moving all the time. I had a Scottish father, an American mother who fell in love in Nigeria. I was born in Ohio. It's very broad. But moved to Mexico when I was 1, so I grew up thinking I was Mexican until I was 11. And then my mom told me that if I really needed to commit to being Mexican, that I would have to join the Mexican army, and we went to an army base. And I was like, no, I'm cool. I'll stick with the American passport. My mom was a smart cat. That was like quite an education. Going to barracks, it's like, you know, so that idea, though, of having an experience, when I moved to the United States, finally, I had something inside my head that wasn't seen, right? So I'm a native Spanish speaker, and very few people, I mean, I scare the out of people when I open my mouth and speak Spanish because they're not expecting it from this European packaging, you know? And so it's that we each have a hidden universe inside of us. And so I know it's inside of me, so I know it's inside of each one of you. And my sense of what art is a trace of that creativity that each one of us has. And, you know, I often tell my students, especially in art school, this does not go over well with parents, but like, don't become an artist unless it suits your temperament, but please find a way to express your creativity in your life, whether it's through cooking or whatever it is. That is your job. Not to become an artist. I don't want there to be more angry, unhappy artists in the world. What I want is for there to be more happy, creative people in the world. So what love is for me is again, honoring what George Herms once told me as he was overwhelmed. We were publishing his book that I was an idea volcano, which I kind of love, right? But this idea of infinite creativity, I want to reverse engineer a world from that. And then maybe, because I do it, a student of mine will do it for herself. And then she will have the ability to nurture the artists in her gallery, to think of a warmer space, one of non-competition, one of how can I help? And it's certainly Michael. Hello. One of the things about this fair that's been great is we've all rolled up our sleeves. It's like, okay, we need to get from point A to point B, we need this, What happens when we come together as a community with people we know and people we've never met before? And I think it really changes the environment. I don't want to be in toxic relationships. I don't want to be talking about having my work stolen. I don't want to, I want people to buy a painting of mine, take it home and feel that I have created it through this dignity that excites them when I'm not there. I don't want to explain. I don't want to preach. I want to be a spark, and then everyone can be a spark in this paradigm, right? I'm going to, speaking of everyone being a spark, we can open up to questions. Is that right?
Perfect.
So if you have a question or a comment and you want to interject, we'd love to welcome that.
And I'll pass the mic.
Yeah,
if you like.
anyone
Perfect,
have any
perfect.
questions, specific comments, want to hear about something?
If you're good, just
We
shout
can
it
go.
out.
Good show. I'd like to
Perfect.
say thank you. We're actually Zooming and we're catching the feed for the state face competition. And we have several young ladies that I know are really enjoying your speech. They said it's very inspirational.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. This is how it works, isn't it? One of the projects that I got to work on last year, it was very sad. I had a museum show at the Orange County Museum of Art, and no one saw it. Which, it was a common experience for other artists who did museum shows in the last year, except for a dance troupe, which was awesome, right? So the dancers got to go and interpret the work, and I have a beautiful dance video, which I'm happy to share with you. But in the museum, we put a pop-up shop, much like the one here at MARFA Invitational. And the idea was that we were going to raise money to buy artists of color, women artists of color, and bring them into the permanent collection. So even with the museum closed, we were able to raise a significant chunk of change. And what to me is exciting is that opportunity to say, well, look, here I am at the table. Why isn't so-and-so here? Why, who else can we invite in? And I don't think we talk enough about how artists can be this force for questioning. Why, when I walk into a museum, do I not see art or artists who look like me? And so many people don't see themselves and don't see their communities, or see it only put in the museum because of politics rather than joy. And there's nothing wrong with politics and political art, in my opinion, but I would like, again, for people to see work made by people who look like them, that's made from a position of joy and life, and not just reacting to. Yes, we have social responsibilities, and I appreciate work that's made from that position, but I also think everyone should have the opportunity to make art from whatever emotional sector they want. So, I don't know where that just came from, but the coffee hit.
Yeah, I think something that most artists have in them is this kind of like critical thinking, problem solving skills. They do it in their studios all day long, and they're doing it at all different levels. So for a painter, it might be like this blue or this blue next to this color creates a psychological effect that you can't really, it's like it's different from that blue, and I'm trying to create an upload, so they're problem solving all day long in their own studios by themselves in their own heads. But when you put artists at the table, they will problem solve anything for you. They think outside the box. They do not think how other people think because they're doing it all day long, They're constantly learning for their practice. And even if it's like this wood works better than that wood for this type of sculpture, you know, I really hope, I know there's been a lot of talk about this kind of like interdisciplinary collaboration, and in fact, CalArts, where we met, California Institute of the Arts, was founded by Walt Disney, who had a very specific idea of interdisciplinary collaboration, where actually it was everyone is kind of just, you know, laboring to create one person's vision. But I think what Alexandra has been doing, and what she was basically trying to instruct in the classes, very specific classes that she was teaching, was that all of the politics, all of the rules, all of the laws that we're living by, whether they're like actual laws or just kind of like things that we're all doing, societal codes, these are games, and we can change the rules.
Go right ahead.
Will your exhibition that was to be shown at Orange County be moved to another museum, I hope?
I hope. That would be wonderful.
We would love that.
It's totally closed.
We would love that.
Yeah. There's a new director coming in.
Heidi Zuckerman. She's wonderful.
From Aspen. She's great.
Yeah.
So it's sad that, I hope you get another exhibition.
I hope so too.
Okay.
But I also learned so much from, again, 6 dancers saw my show.
Wow.
Right? How cool is that? At least and then they interpreted it. So again, I think we've just lived through, one of the great things about being here with all of you is we're coming out of quarantine.
Yeah.
Right? We've all had these traumatic experiences of isolation in different ways. So when I look back and look at this dance video, with the dancers not being able to touch in with masks, it will sum up the year for me.
And how can we access that?
We'll make sure and send the video out.
Please.
It's so surprising.
It's so moving.
Yeah.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah. I see a hand.
Hi, question regarding art therapy versus art as a professional form of expression, right, for a living. What's the difference between the two? Or is all art therapy?
Please.
Yeah. So what I heard of the question is that what's the difference between art therapy and art for a living? Okay. So to be totally honest, I have no idea what art therapy is. So I'm not sure how to answer that. What I do know is that I've given myself permission to fully express all my interests as an artist, and that touches on psychology, it touches on caring for others, but I'm not in the business of, I care deeply, but I'm not a professional healer. And so I would be very careful about that. I'm interested in healing for myself, and I am someone who will suggest. I'm a brainstormer. But I think art therapy is something very specific, and what I can imagine is it's to help people who have had medical issues or traumatic issues. And so I think there's at least that's my guess.
And I think
Not helpful.
many of the artists that we know that we're in dialogue with regularly, their art practices are very therapeutic for them, and I think that art is healing. I think it's healing just to look at it and to interact with it as a viewer, as an audience, but I think it's incredibly healing to just, use your body to make things in whatever way that looks. If you're using a computer or you're writing or you're painting, I would encourage everybody to make art, because I think everybody is an artist, can be an artist. And we use the word artist of the art world, and that's, a very specific idea, but I honestly believe there's, it's a different game that we're playing, with different rules, but you can make anything, and it's very healing, because what will you make your work about is, you don't have to answer that question, but you're gonna make work about something that matters to you, even if it's like flowers, I think it's.
Well, I'm just going to stop you because I disagree. I don't think everyone's an artist, and I hope not, right? Please stop using that word, people. No, that is a career. Everyone is creative. Everyone is creative.
Everyone is creative.
And
That's
I
right.
think that creativity can go into just being whatever that looks like. And so being an artist, there's rules and parameters and a lot of judgment. And what my goal, especially in this talk this morning, is to think about who sets those rules, who keeping those rules in place benefits, and then why I strongly believe that I like to break rules, right? And that the way I'm going to do it, the revolution that I want to be part of, isn't one of, you're not listening to me thinking, wow, she's so full of anger and rage, are you? No. But I'm gently trying to say, why is that line there? Why are there certain people not in the conversation? And how do we gently make more room for ourselves and for others? Yes, question.
For the writers you work with and artists for ex-artist books and also Grant Love Project, how do you identify them?
It is a very intuitive process. With Grant Love, it's looking into the community of artists I already know, but then it's also, I was living in Berlin for 5 months last year, and I found a wonderful screen printer, and I said, look, I want to make a series of love prints. Are there artists that you love to work with? And so she recommended some wonderful Spanish illustrators named Gachete de Jack. And so that happened very organically. I didn't set out to make those images. I found a person I really enjoyed working with who is a master printer, and then she suggested the collaborators. And we had similar values in terms of how we worked, and so the images came from a process that was an interpersonal process. And so that's the sort of organic way that I like to work. Here at the pop-up shop, we have 3 quilts by a quilt maker named Sarah Sink. We wanted to feature a Texan artist, and she's from Fort Worth. And Sarah wrote me an email that said, I love your love project. Have you ever thought about making, have you ever thought about making quilts? And I was like, oh no, never. And sure, give it a go. So again, it's that I get an email from someone will make something and send it in the mail, and I'll think, wow, this is absolutely, for me, the practice as a studio artist is very isolated. It's not that I get bored, but I'm worried that I become too introspective. And so, but what I care a lot about is keeping my learning curve steep. And it's in working and collaborating with others that I get to learn. So it's often an interest that'll draw me to another artist, or especially with ex-artist books, caring about a specific topic and wanting to know more. I mean, what I suffer from a bit of magpie eye, oh, shiny, sparkly, oh, what other. So what a collaboration has is an ethics of getting shit done, right? So you're saying to an artist, we're gonna make a book about this, topic, and you have a beginning, middle, and end. And again, that's why I like having these projects, because it's a commitment to finishing, bringing into the world, finding people with like interests who might want to, buy a book or wear a hoodie.
Like coming back to your pillars from before, you have to love yourself and be true to yourself. But then when you go out into the world, it's when you are yourself operating with love, like-minded people will find you. You'll find each other. It's just how it works.
Speaking of finding things, could you be sure to tell us where your pop-up shop is in case we'd like to visit it while we're here?
Well, first, Megan and Polly will be at the booth inside the OCHI Projects here for the rest of the day and tomorrow morning, I believe. And then the pop-up shop is at 217 San Antonio, and it is the MARFA Invitational HQ. It's over here.
Indeed. The easiest instructions from here is a left, a right, and a left. Left, right, left.
Left, right, left.
You will have arrived.
And please, if we're going to be interacting for the rest of the day here in MARFA, you can get my email. If you have a vision for something that needs to be brought to the world, I would love to talk to you about it. We can, I'll give you my email for when we leave MARFA, but I just hope that you know how grateful I am that you're all here, and that this is a long-term exchange.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I always learn from my dear friends, so thank you. I would love to invite you all to come to Polly OCHI's booth to Alexandra to view her work in the hall now following this most enlightening conversation. So, and take a look if you haven't already of these incredible works and enjoy them and perhaps take one home. But at the very least, view them and introduce yourself to Alexandra if you have not already. And thank you all for joining us. We look forward to welcoming you 4 to 6 p.m. at the site of MARFA Invitational Foundation, where there will be an outdoor installation of JPW3 between 4 and 6 p.m. And again, that will be a left, right, left. Just a little further up the hill, it's about an eighth of a mile, just down the road. So you will indeed find it, and I will be looking forward to welcoming you all. Thank you. Enjoy this gorgeous spring weather, amazing art, and thank you all again.
Thank you so much.
Oh, hi. Good.
How'd we do? Is that all right?
So, I want to tag it when you're doing it, and you know, like wealth and breadth of knowledge. You have something that